So good evening, everyone. I'm Raymond Lesniak, founder of the Lesniak Institute for American Leadership. Our mission is to develop the next generation of American leaders, young and old, through advocacy, education, and training. Tonight's forum is about the political and personal discourse in America, which has devolved to a place where the insult of the day is an everyday occurrence. We hear it from President Trump and from President Trump's opponents. We hear it directed at strangers walking on the street or sitting at a coffee shop. Tonight's forum will discuss this hate speech, its impact on individual lives and on society, and how we can stand up for the other being anyone who's being bullied or harassed. Take a look.
I'm allowed to talk to streets.
No.
People on streets.
It's being recorded right now, so.
Right, no, it's good. But your shitty people should go.
What do you mean, you're shitty people? Of course, Jew was born here. First of all.
I don't care.
And I came here, and I'm an American citizen.
Right.
Where are you
But
from?
you're traitors to the country, okay?
Okay, hold up. Where are you from?
Just keep walking. Just keep walking.
I'll explain to you
Just keep
very
walking.
simply.
Just keep walking.
Very simply. In America,
Keep
you're
walking,
allowed.
keep walking,
No,
keep walking,
in your
keep walking,
shitty
keep
country.
Clients at your staff is speaking Spanish to customers when they should be speaking
very violent. I mean, sometimes they do
Like he is. Every person I listen to, he spoke it, she's speaking it, is America. You're
He's extremely ignorant. He's very ignorant, and he shouldn't be allowed.
Because I will be following up, and my guess is they're not documented. So my next call is to ICE to have each one of them kicked out of my country. If they have the balls to come here and live off of my money, I pay for their welfare, I pay for their ability to be here. The least they can do is
Their welfare?
Yes, a place in Midtown Manhattan, your staff should be speaking English, not Spanish.
Because of people like you, our nation.
Honey, I'm calling ICE.
Call ICE. So that they can speak.
Maybe you shouldn't eat that sandwich today. Take a break from the food.
This is what I'm wearing, guys. This is what I'm wearing. Can you please get away from me? Can you please get away from me? Well, first of all, the United States owns Puerto Rico, so we're part of the United States.
We don't own Puerto Rico. We protect Puerto Rico.
Okay.
We don't own Puerto Rico.
Okay.
It's the United States of America. So what's your point now?
Well, what's your point, sir?
My point is, why are you wearing that?
Because I can. Officer, can you please? I'm renting this area, and he's harassing me about the shirt that I'm wearing.
You're not renting it.
I did rent
So you
it.
put a permit.
I have a permit for this.
Permit
Right,
to
so
have it.
can you please step away from me, sir? Can you please step away from me?
You're not going to change us. You know that?
I'm not trying to change anyone. I'm just trying to come here
No,
for a birthday
the world
party.
is not going to change the United States of America.
Okay.
Period.
Okay.
You should not be wearing that in the United States of America.
Okay.
Black Lives Matter. Okay. Seriously. Okay. Who the fuck cares about some black man who dies in the book? Invite your friends, bro. This is getting live. What? Alright, keep going. Will, stop. Yeah, keep going. Black Lives Matter? No, of course not. They're an inferior race, okay? Like, does anybody really care? Like, look at this motherfucker. Alright, this guy is a traitor to the white race.
As you can see, we have a lot of work to do and a lot of advocacy to do. So let's get to work and stand up for the other, each and every one of us. So at this time, we're going to take the pledge that was written by Dr. Ali Chaudhry. He is going to lead us in the pledge. And should we stand up? Dr. Chaudhry, I think we should. And we're going to take the pledge. It's on the screen there for everyone to hear. Dr. Chaudhry, put on your microphone, please. Press the button there.
Now it's great. Well, please repeat after me. While interacting with members of my own faith, or ethnic, or gender community, or with others, if I hear hateful comments
hateful comments
from anyone
about
members of any other community.
Any other community.
I pledge
to
stand up
for the other
and speak up to challenge bigotry in any form.
Thank you very much. Please have your seat. And that's the message for today, to spread the word about standing up for the other and inculcate it into the fabric of American society. We're going to start with a introduction from President Dawood Farahi of Kean University. Dr. Farahi.
Thank you. My job is very simple, is to welcome you to Kean University and to welcome Senator Lesniak again here. Without his help, most of the things you see around here wouldn't be possible. And to welcome my friend, Mr. Aaron, one of the few very fair and a man of integrity as a journalist.
Stop it, Dawood.
No, I stay away from the media. The only show I went to was his, and he was fair to me. I was watching the World Cup soccer. I think some of you may have watched that. And when you watch it, you see that people are representing countries. And many countries in the world are either based on religion or based on ethnicity, right? Or based on a geographic location related to a particular language. But America is not. And I said to myself, so what is it that makes us unique? We're not Croatians, we're not Germans, we're not English. What is it that makes us unique? And then I thought about that this is a country that is based on a certain set of values. Values that was prescribed in the Bill of Rights, enshrined in a constitution. That kind of a nation requests and asks a lot more from its people than a typical country in Europe or Asia or someplace else. It asks from its citizens to participate in different processes that promote democracy, and above all, does what the Lesniak Institute is planning to do in a small way, to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. Kean is now rated as one of the top 5 most diverse universities in America. In America.
You deserve a hand for that, Dawood, for promoting that. Thank you.
It's not that issue at Kean anymore that we tolerate people that come from different places. Toleration is bogus. We accept people.
We embrace them.
We accept them as who they are. Embracement also has a different meaning. To me, acceptance is a better word, meaning we accept them for who they are, for what their religion is, what their ethnicity is, and what the color of their skin is. And if we did that and stood up for those who cannot stand up for themselves, we have met the mission and the pledge that we made today. So again, thank you for coming to Kean, and I hope you come again. Enjoy the panel. Thank you.
What did you say? What word did you use? You said America is based
on values.
Values.
We're not a country of Englishmen. We're not a country of Muslims or Jews or Christians. We're not a country that is, we're not Croatians. We're not Albanians. We're not Muslims. We're not Christians.
People who share a set of values?
Values that were enshrined in the Bill of Rights, upon which a constitution was created and a nation was established. That's who we are. And that's the one thing that we don't want to forget, and I hope we don't.
Thank you, President Ferrari. And Michael, before I turn over the forum to the Dean of the State House Press Corps, I'd like everyone, starting with Dr. Chaudhry and and moving around to his left to state your name and your organization.
My name is Ali Chaudhry. I'm president of the Islamic Society of Basking Ridge. I'm also a former mayor of Bernard Township, popularly known as Basking Ridge, and co-founder of the New Jersey Interfaith Coalition, as several members of that coalition are present here today. And finally, I would just mention that this pledge that came out of a discussion in March of 2015 is something that I value greatly, and I have essentially made this as #1 priority in any conversation that I have with leaders and any communities, that we need to really individually accept the responsibility that not only, as Dr. Farahi said, that we accept everyone. I would add, and I would go one step further, that we respect everyone. American values are of liberty and justice for all, and that means respect for all. Thank you.
My name is Jessica Milne, and I'm the founder of LGBT Advocacy, which focuses on ensuring that schools are a positive and productive working environment for all students. And I also represent a section of North Jersey in the Miss America organization.
I'm Colleen O'Day. I am a reporter with New Jersey Spotlight. We are an online, statewide, issue-oriented website. I'm a lifelong Jersey resident and a long-time journalist here in New Jersey.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rahat Babar. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at the Attorney General's Office. If I can take a quick second, I also want to introduce two other folks from my office. We have Steve Finkel here, who is our Director of Legislative Affairs, and Andrew Johns, who's our Bureau Chief for Specialized Crime. Among other things in his shop also includes bias crime. So we're happy to be here. So thank you for having us.
Councilwoman here in the city of Elizabeth. Well, we're not in Elizabeth, but in the border of Elizabeth. And I'm also a commissioner on the New Jersey Human Rights Commission. And pledges are important. My son, he just graduated from Elizabeth High School, and they have a pledge that they do every day that talks about the school community and respecting one another. Teachers have to respect the child, children have to respect the teachers, and they're there for learning opportunities. So pledges do work if it's done on a concerted effort and basically every day. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Hassan Chaudhry. I want to thank Senator Lesniak for letting me be on this panel. We just drove up from the shore. This panel is of utmost importance to me, so much so that I dragged my mother and mother-in-law with me, who are sitting in the back. By way of background, I'm the state's third-term president of the New Jersey Muslim Lawyers Association. I'm a former law enforcement officer as an assistant prosecutor in 2 counties, and I used to do a lot of juvenile bullying cases as well, so this is kind of near and dear to my heart. I have my own criminal defense practice right now, and I see many familiar faces in this room that I've worked with. And I was one of 4 co-chairs that were Muslim on Governor Murphy's transition team for law and justice. So I'm very happy and excited to be here, and I'm glad that there's a lot more outreach under this umbrella and this topic. Thank you.
Very good. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Ibrahim Quadri. I represent the Muslim community of Somerset County, where I'm proud to say that there's 3 mosques in the works right now. Basking Ridge, which is Dr. Ali Chaudhry's, the Al-Falah Mosque in Bridgewater, which was a federal landmark case, which we won, and then there's one in Hillsborough where I live today. So I represent kind of the community. I'm kind of affiliated with all of them. And just by way of background, my father was the first imam in Bridgewater back in the 70s. That's kind of where I was born and raised. So I'm classified as the first generation. So very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Hi, my name is Ayaz Aslam. I'm a member of Muslim Community Center of Kean County, located on Maggie Avenue. I'm also a steering committee member of Kean County Interfaith Coordinating Council, and also a member of New Jersey Interfaith Coordinating Council.
My name is Aslam Chaudhry, and I'm affiliated with the MCCUC, Muslim Community Center of Union County, and I'm a volunteer for CASA.
Good evening. My name is Linda Lewis. I am a member of the Kean University Board of Trustees, and I will share with my esteemed colleagues my experience here this evening. However, I dare not speak on behalf of the Board of Trustees, but I do speak from my over 40 years of experience in education, as well as being one of the pioneers in affirmative action as a branch chief with the United States Department of Office for Civil Rights. I oversaw the implementation of civil rights legislation in New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. We often would say you can't legislate attitude, and that is the case. But at that time, there was more of a no tolerance of bigotry and discrimination because you had the laws behind you. Now affirmative action is a dirty word, and the moral compass of this country seems to have been demagnetized. So I'm sure we'll get into that later.
Good evening. I'm Carolyn Morano, Assistant Commissioner of Education, representing Dr. Lamont Repollette, our Commissioner. Thank you for inviting me. In my division is Student Services, and we manage all of the harassment, intimidation, and bullying cases that are reported in the schools, and do our best to make sure that schools have the correct reporting process and way to manage these ideas and these things that come across for children, all kinds of children, with all ages. Thank you.
I'm Jake Toporek. I'm Executive Director of the New Jersey State Association of Jewish Federations, and I'm very, very happy to be here and accept the invitation from Ray. Ray and I have worked on these matters for a long, long time. I can't tell you how many years I've known Ray, but I appreciate it very much. And Dr. Chaudhry, sorry for your loss. And, I absolutely value the friendship that we have and the relationship that started all over the place.
Thank you very much.
I'm John Schreier. I'm chairman of the New Jersey Commission on Civil Rights. I've also been very involved over the years in the LGBT rights community, and it's a pleasure to be here this evening.
I'm Reverend Howard Bryant, a United Presbyterian, honorably retired. However, I'm employed working with the Union County Interfaith Coordinating Council in Elizabeth.
My name is Lionel Slade. I'm the administrator for the American Muslim Foundation. We're a transitional to permanent housing organization in the community. We're also self-funded.
My name is Aga Khan. I'm Commissioner Civil Rights, MLK, and also I'm running for U.S. Congress, District 10, the Republican. So I'm over here and I'm thankful to you guys inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. I just want to point out that we do have another Republican here, John Schreier here, so we're not all Democrats. Michael, it's all yours.
All right, Ray. Good evening, everybody. I'm Michael Aaron. I'm Chief Political Correspondent at NJTV News. It used to be NJN. I've been doing it for 35 years. I moderate panels, but I've never moderated a panel this large. I want to commend Ray for pulling us all together tonight and in a good cause and setting a good tone of spirituality and harmony. I'm sure we all are only feeling good tonight about one another, and yet we're living at a time in which there is an awful lot of hatred and insulting language. I think our best way of operating here is not for me to ask a question and then get 16 different answers, but for me to throw out a question onto the beautiful, expensive round table here, and whoever wants to pick it up, we'll try to get a flow going. My first question is hate speech really on the rise, or are we just a little more sensitive to it and more exposed to it than because there's of media saturation? Is it really on the rise, hate speech and bias and ethnic and racial disharmony? Linda.
I think that the thoughts were there, but now people feel safe expressing them. They feel as though they are no longer the silent majority, but the vocal majority. I think that the importance of this pledge is that we all recognize that it's our responsibility. Each one teach one, each one work with one. Your question, is it on the rise? I think it was always there. I think we just hear it louder because people feel safer saying it.
Why do they feel safer saying it?
They feel that there's political support for what they say. They feel that there's community support for what they say. They feel justified in what they're saying. Because, you know, if you didn't have a belief system that supported what you say or do, you wouldn't do it.
Jake?
Yeah, people also look to their leaders.
A little louder.
People also look to their leaders. I think it's important to note that most people are followers and not leaders, and they'll look to their leaders for either comfort, security, safety, and permission. And I think, and I'm not going to point any fingers.
We all know where you're pointing.
Yes. But there is a permissiveness that exists today that never existed before. And because of
why?
This permissiveness...
Why is that?
As I said, she said it was hidden. It just needed motivation. It needed someone to, you know, unplug or open Pandora's box, and I think the box has been opened.
You think Trump did it?
I'm not going to blame Trump, you know, but it would be more comforting to have someone speak out every time there is something. I think that maybe Mr. Trump or some of his colleagues ought to take this pledge and then follow through. It seems to me that no one's speaking out. I have to say in the state of New Jersey, we're not in that situation. I think the governors that we've had in the past, the governor we have today, the attorney generals we've had in the past, the attorney generals that we have today, they speak out. They say over and over again that there's be zero tolerance for what is happening today, and that's not happening on a national level. And I think that's why we have the rise and the increase.
Go ahead. Sure.
I just want to add something. I think it's very important for us who believe in the pledge not to mimic and say the same things that are being said, you know, that we oppose. We don't have to fight hate with hate or anger with anger. I know that's not easy. Pat knows I know that's not easy. But I think it's important for us not to feed into that, like as Darth Vader would say, you know, let me feel your anger.
So we shouldn't be angry at Trump.
We should disagree with him. We should speak out against what he has said when he does say it, and be civil about it. And I think that's the best way that we can answer in kind.
This is certainly a civil way of having a discussion. Colleen, and then we'll go over here.
So I did some research last night because I knew I was coming here, and just about everything that I've seen says that indeed the numbers are going up.
Numbers of what?
Of hate crimes, of bias incidents. I don't want to step on the AG's toes here, but according to and this is just the 2016 report, we don't have a 2017 bias report out yet, maybe soon. But again, there's national information that showed the Southern Poverty Law Center specifically did a study or a quick. It wasn't a a scientific study, but right around the election and right after the election, that there was a big increase nationally in incidents in New Jersey. So in 2016, we had an increase of 14% over 2015.
Right after the election, the presidential election?
This is right.
Do you see a causal connection there?
I don't see how you not see a causal connection. There's the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism at California State University, which again found a similar increase. Now, they looked at 2017 data, and they found that from 2016 to 2017, in the nation's largest cities, there was a 20% increase in, again, hate and bias incidents. So those are, I mean, it's kind of hard to argue with numbers like that. I do want to point out one other thing which I found very interesting. Nate Silver's 538 blog, that's the guy who had never called a presidential election wrong until 2016. Their blog, again, talked about an increase in numbers, but they did some other analysis and found that actually over history, when we've seen an increase in hate and bias crimes, it has coincided with high levels of inequality, income inequality, which I think we would all agree is something that we certainly have in the United States at this point.
Huh. Yes. Aslan.
Yes. So I personally think that it's an amalgamation of multiple factors. I think that this was always, as the woman over here was saying, I apologize, forgot her name, the Board of Trustees. Yes. One of the things is that this was always internalized, all this prejudice and what have you. But for me, as an American born in New York and as a Muslim, I think this really started to materialize post 9/11, where it became something of us versus them mentality. And then you have the Iraq War, you have our troops going into Afghanistan, and then you see this constantly bombarded. You have one group that looks one way and another group that looks another way. And then on top of that, you have an immigration policy, which people were very upset about. Couple that with economic problems, and then you have an opioid epidemic, you have other drug and mental health epidemics. You combine all this together, and this pot starts boiling over. We're in 2018, so it's almost 17 years later, and it's as if you were cooking soup, and it's 17 minutes left till the pot's about to explode, and we have this presidential election. And we're a nation that really goes from the top down rather from the bottom up, and when we have the person who's in power, and it could have been a Democrat or a Republican, and if that's the type of verbiage, that's the kind of rhetoric they're using, it basically gives people carte blanche saying that if our leader can say this unchecked, unfiltered, and he has this right to say it, then now I have my freedom of speech to totally go out and abuse what I say, you know, target other groups. It's just being picked up more now because the masses now feel that much more comfortable, because if the leader can say it, I can say it now.
When President Bush, after 9/11, right after, within days, said, this is not about Islam. Islam is a religion of peace. Why didn't that message resonate?
Well, I think one of the things was that, I mean, although he did say that, some of his verbiage, if I'm not mistaken, included the word crusades too, if I'm not mistaken. So it was in conflict with one another. It was a little bit of tension. And even though I could say the sky is green right now, but if everybody looks out, it's blue, the conduct versus the actual language are two different things. Because if you speak to military veterans, at least the ones I did, the majority of them will say the actions in Iraq and Afghanistan are a complete failure. Okay, and we're still over there.
So
Michael,
go ahead.
Because I'm going to blame you guys a little bit. Because I remember being at a press conference a few days after the terrorist attack in Paris. And I talked about how that those terrorists who were Muslim were not following the Muslim faith. They were only following the anger and hate that was in their hearts, and that Islam is a religion of peace. No one covered that, Michael.
I think
No?
it rings a bell
All
as
right,
if
well,
I were
maybe you
there.
did. But my overall, I guess, message is, you know, hate sells. It's, you know, anger overcomes love. You don't see a lot of that on, or enough of that on TV. And that's why I think a lot of forums like this.
You have a point. When we decide which soundbite to put into a piece on the news, the attack line, the stronger the attack line, the more likely we are to use it. It's true. There and then there. I didn't catch your name.
Abraham.
Ibrahim.
Ibrahim.
Abraham.
Abraham. I think
Okay.
it's the same. I think it's the same person, pretty sure. I'd be remiss if I didn't, speak on what my son spoke about a while ago. And he's 16 in high school. He's a sophomore. And Dr. Chaudhry was at that event, and he said, Dad, how come when a Muslim commits an act of violence, he's a terrorist? But then you can have a white person in Texas kill 20 people in a church. You can have the largest mass shooting in Las Vegas, and it's mental health. I think we have a problem of education. I think after 9/11, my good friend Ihsan mentioned it, there was a lot of education that went on. A lot of Republicans and Democrats joined hands and they spoke out against and they defended the Muslim community. I don't think the Muslim community could have done enough advertising about our religion as 9/11 did, unfortunately. But I think right after that, the Quran was the #1 book sold on Amazon right afterwards. So we have to.
What does that tell you? That people were curious about the religion?
I think the Muslim community has a lot of work to do in educating. We are a minority in this country, but there's a lot of work in educating. However, I also noted there's a responsibility of the media, of our local government, of our law enforcement, and as Ihsan mentioned, we're in every facet of this country. We are enshrined in the military, in the government. We're firefighters, we're law enforcement, we're physicians, we're doctors. It's incumbent upon us to work at the grassroots community level and build up. And I'm very proud to see that a lot of Muslims here are getting more and more involved with that. However, one shift I've seen since probably 9/11 with this presidency is now we've included another group, the Hispanic group, that's being attacked. The African Americans, which they're constantly under attack for various reasons, but I've seen that uptick with this presidency, and what I don't see is a rebuttal from the other party, or you can say, I mean, for evil to rise and persist, it's just for good people to do nothing. Are we to assume the other party is just not good? I don't think that's the case. So I don't have all the answers, but I can tell you that I can only sense that it's always in ebbs and flows. After 9/11, things died down, things started going very well, and now we have this president, and I just see the uptick in the hate violence and the crimes and stuff.
Thank you. John?
I really sense that, particularly in the last few years, I think a lot of this disunity that we feel in this country is coming from 24-hour news stations. I really can't stomach watching it anymore. I can't, the left or the right, it's entertainment, and I think Trump was an entertainer as well. He was entertaining his base and those who he was performing for. And what I see right now is you have such a far left and you have such a far right. There's nobody in the middle to sort of bring it all together. I don't see very many moderates left in Congress. Hopefully we have some more in the New Jersey legislature, but it saddens me because I can't even say they're Democrats and Republicans anymore. It's far left, it's far right, and they're just throwing grenades at each other. And I don't think it creates a place where we can all sit down and discuss things and accomplish things.
And you blame the media in part.
Well, you would have to a degree, especially the 24-hour news stations, because they're trying to get ratings, and they get ratings by creating news and creating disharmony and the lack of
What did you say?
really
Conflict by creating
yeah.
conflict, yes.
For entertainment's sake.
Yes, Linda.
I think that we have to begin discussions on the root of this problem. This country was founded on bigotry, hatred, discrimination. Native Americans my ancestors were subjected and continue to be subjected to discrimination, bigotry, bias, prejudice. It's an ongoing phenomenon, whether it's fear, whether it's capitalism, whether it's whatever. There is something that's at the root of the founding of this country that allows this to flourish.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with you, Linda.
Sure.
Thinking of Dr. Martin Luther King's words of the arc of the moral universe curves slowly, but it always curves towards justice. Now, what I believe that we've seen lately is not only a slowing down of that curve, but maybe a reversal of that curve. And I think it's incumbent upon every one of us to make sure that Dr. King's words continue to move that curve towards justice. May I, Pat?
Yeah.
May I
Yeah,
take over this?
sure. We're co-moderating. Go ahead, Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Aaron. I think the media truly plays a big part in our current day cycle of violence that we see in America. And I'm just at awe that usually, you know, the type of violence that you see only happens with, you know, I hate to say like leaders and people of, you know, who are higher up on the echelon. But when you have everyday people bombing and killing people, that's really frightening because it's hitting the structure of America. I mean, the everyday person who goes to work feels like it's okay to shoot up people at the university or at a school. There's something really that's really shifting us as a nation that says it's okay.
What do you think it is?
It's a lot of things. I think media plays, I really do think the media, I think we oversaturated with images. I think we oversaturated with ways of how to get out whatever issues that we have internally in terms of violence. And I think we feel like violence it releases. I think that's what people believe, that it releases some tension, but it doesn't. You know, it makes things worse for the person. That's why they wind up, most of them, they wind up killing themselves. You know, so I think media truly plays a great role. I have, you know, sons and they teenage and they like glued to this 24/7. And they can see all types of images. They can see fighting. They can see people killing one another. I mean, you look at a newsreel every day. Someone's getting killed. Someone's getting... It's like constant. Something happens and immediately it's spread throughout the world. Everyone knows what's happening in America because we're killing each other. I mean, I think education is the key. I think if we begin to really educate, we need to change our course of studies for elementary school children. In high school, we need to teach diplomacy, reading, writing, arithmetic, and diplomacy along with technology.
Diplomacy, did you say?
Yeah, you need to teach how to, it needs to be a real course on conflict resolution. How do you know, you're teaching high technology, but people don't know how to talk to each other sitting next to one another.
In fact,
you know, that's in the classroom. All the kids have phones, so they don't even know how to communicate. Like, if they don't know no form of communication as human beings. We are born to communicate. You know, we are born to be communicators with one another, not with machines.
All right, we're going to get back. We're going to get back to that.
I'm quite sure you will.
Because I think you're onto something. But
okay.
Jessica, go ahead.
Thank you.
Well, and I think that one of the things that we should really make
Is your mic on? Yes, it is. Yeah. Go ahead.
In future curriculums is reinstating ethics, because it's not a course about telling you and your instructor telling you what is right and wrong, but teaching people and young people how to decide that for themselves. But I do agree with what Linda was saying, because I think one of the problems is that old adage about if you don't learn history, it'll just repeat itself. And as a country, but specifically there's an issue with white Americans where we have trouble acknowledging what our ancestors did and acknowledging when they were on the wrong side of history. We still celebrate Thanksgiving and glorify it and not teach young children about how many Native Americans we slaughtered to come here. We have these problems where we still hail Christopher Columbus as an icon, and people within the Italian American community will not acknowledge what he actually did and the crimes against people that he committed. And I feel like until we're able to recognize that and come to terms with that within ourselves, we're doomed to keep repeating the same
Do you think
cycle.
there's a growing awareness of slavery and these crimes of the past, or not?
For certain things like slavery, yes. For what people acknowledge as smaller things like the crimes of Columbus, no, because that's being worked to be wiped away. But we're even seeing things that we are educated about, like the Holocaust. And I was talking to my mother about it earlier. It's a legitimate thing to say that we have Nazis again, and that blows my mind. Going through high school and college, I never would have thought that that was something that we were coming back around to.
Jake, what do you think about that? Jake, what's your thought about that? On about the apparent rise of Nazism in America.
Look, there's no doubt that there's been a huge increase in anti-Semitism internationally and here in the United States and in New Jersey. And I do have to say that actually the rise in Islamophobia and acts of violence and hatred against Muslims have increased 60% in a very short period of time. So, as was indicated before, there's this aura of permissiveness that it's allowed, it's permitted. But I do think that education is very, very important across the board. Look, I'm a son of Holocaust survivors. I wasn't born in this country. I came as an immigrant. My parents struggled. They were given an opportunity. And I don't think that opportunity exists anymore or isn't allowed to exist anymore. And that's a failure of the whole system, that we are denying certainly perhaps our roots and our beginnings, but what we're also denying are some of the values and the constitutional guarantees that we live by, that my parents were able to have that opportunity that other people don't have anymore. And we're denying that to ourselves, and we're doing a disservice to ourselves. And as long as we keep doing that, these incidents are going to happen. It's going to increase.
Are you saying we're denying it to new immigrants? Is that who you're saying we're denying it to?
New immigrants, old immigrants. I think there's just not an opportunity for everyone out there, and nobody sees that. I think it's almost as being in a depressed state, that you don't know where to go for happiness. You don't know where to go for livelihood. You don't know where to go for comfort. Everything around you seems like it's falling in. And I think my parents did not feel that because they were accepted, because the values
Where did they
were
come
so
from?
strong. Poland. We lost, my mother's family lost 27 in the Holocaust. My father's family lost about 20. They were sort of one of the lucky ones, if you want to say they're lucky. They managed to escape Poland when the Nazis came in, but the Russians trained them over to Siberia, and so they were in Siberia for the war. And my brother and I were born actually in Kazakhstan, they were lucky enough to get a pass to go to southern Russia back then, and we made our way back afterwards. But the point is, the opportunity for everybody doesn't exist, and I think it builds upon itself. And we've got problems unless we can really restore faith in our democracy.
You're echoing what somebody said before, I guess Colleen, about inequality. You're saying when things get tough, discrimination rises. Is that what you? Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we have to deal with the psyche of the individuals, and it's very, very difficult to do. But again, it's our leadership that has the task to do that. When we go to vote, and it's important to get everybody out to vote, we have to send a strong message that this is a priority. Sure, certainly the economy is a priority, jobs are a priority, but this is a priority because no matter how rich you are and how wealthy you are, I mean,
when you say this is
if your environment is hostile, what good is it for you?
When you say this is a priority, say in the next election, what is a priority? Electing people Who are civil, who are tolerant?
Civility, tolerance, getting to know each other, respect each other.
Okay.
I would love to see each candidate, and you're running for office, stand up, say, I took the pledge. I want you as a candidate to take the pledge. I want everybody to take that pledge and live by it.
So let me, Michael, let me say something.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Because, and Dr. Chaudhry knows this, when I asked the entire Senate to take the pledge, how can you not want to take this pledge? We had a lot of absentees, didn't we?
Yes.
A good number of New Jersey senators, I'm ashamed to say, thought that they were afraid to take this pledge.
Why?
I don't know. Dr. Chaudhry, I mean, I don't know. It was, you know, I just don't know the hesitancy and the body politic, and it's not just the media. It's those of us in politics who exploit the media. I watched this hearing today, all-day hearing today, on the FBI guy. I mean, one side was worse than the other. They were just hammering each other. To what end? To what end? But I don't have the answers other than to ask everyone else around here, you know, to take the pledge and talk to your neighbors. And it sounds...
Maybe your colleagues thought this was a Ray Lesniak stunt. I'm not going to fall for it.
Well, if I may add...
Whoever thought of a Ray Lesniak? Dr. Chaudhry?
Well, if I may add, on that day, this was December 19th, 2016, when we spent the whole day at the Capitol. And I did talk with several senators. They came around as we were discussing the issue before we formally stood in the committee room to take the pledge. And one of them did actually tell me, and I won't name him, that I don't take any pledges other than the Pledge to Allegiance. So that was his reason for not doing it. But I would suspect that some felt that if they did that, and I can tell you this because it happened at a congregation where when the leader of the congregation proposed the idea to the board that we should take this pledge, there were people on the board who said, "You're accusing me. Why do I need to take this pledge?" So it is as if,
what faith?
this happened to be a synagogue.
A synagogue.
Yes.
Okay.
But it also happened in other cases where I know, because I have had tremendous success actually with several churches and synagogues and schools where people have embraced the idea and they don't see this as any kind of a blame on them individually. They feel that this is a challenge that we all need to take. But unfortunately, I want to go back to the heart of your question. Is hate rising? Yeah. We know, we heard the statistics, especially with respect to Muslims. After 9/11, there was a huge increase. And that actually resulted in a lot of work by Muslims. There were institutions like the Center for Understanding Islam that we established. 3 days later, 3 days after 9/11, we sat down and said we had to do something. And then it subsided. And according to John Esposito at Georgetown, that the anti-Muslim, anti-Islam hate really skyrocketed after 2010, following where you've heard of the Ground Zero Mosque. The opposition to the mosque,
Which mosque?
It was called the Ground Zero Mosque.
Okay.
There was a mosque that was it was a community center that was being developed right close on downtown road. And people like Pamela Geller and others came and made that a big issue. Michael Savage, or Michael Spencer and others. The reason I want to point this out to you is that underlying the real issue that we face today and why hate is really rising, and it's now much more in the open, because there is a whole industry that is funded by hundreds of millions of dollars to do this. Southern Poverty Law Center has documented this, as you pointed out. So when I speak to some of the audiences, and I speak to a lot of them, and I find that people who really believe in respecting each other, recognizing everyone's humanity, and treating them equally, still are influenced by the money that's being spent, the people who are propagating the hate. So I think the challenge for us is
when you say that hate has become an industry,
right.
Are you talking about white supremacist groups? What are you talking about?
There are, well, we were told just at a recent meeting of the Attorney General at the Homeland Security that there are 14 identified white supremacist groups in the state of New Jersey. Okay? Spread around several counties.
Aren't they the radical fringe?
But that, I think, is
just a handful of crazy people?
I think there are more than just the white supremacists. It's the general fear that people have developed because of ignorance, because of bad policies to which people react, and then they get blamed for, for being, as this video showed, that you are a traitor to this country.
I must add, when the President of the United States says that they are sending in rapists, they're sending in criminals, that Haitians are coming in with diseases.
Right.
That does a terrible disservice to the fabric of America. And that has to be said. This has nothing to do with, John, do you agree with me? No doubt.
I do.
And you're a Republican. As a matter of fact, you're the Republican chair, right? And
I was, yeah.
But, you were?
I were.
Okay.
But, very honestly, people have spoken out against Trump within the Republican Party on some of his most egregious things that he's done. And, it's really not reported. It's really not brought out there, and that's
but how do you compete against the president for time? That's the
other. Well, right. Everybody who complains so often as to how he got the nomination. He got the nomination because he got the most exposure. He just filled the room. He took all the air out of the room. So it was real. I mean, you had a lot of gifted and talented Republicans running, and they didn't get the time of day. So, but it was a point that I wanted to make about our founding fathers and everything that several people have made. A lot of people came to this country far after the founding of America. My family came in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and they worked very hard to become part of the American fabric, whatever that is. I mean, there was a culture being American. They left their homelands. They went through 2 world wars, and some people had to fight against their brothers and sisters because, they became Americans. They became that unique thing called Americans. And I think to a large extent, and when we're talking about American values and things, we sort of have lost our culture. We sort of have lost, even with all the diversity, and I'm not speaking against diversity, but I'm saying the diversity, out of many one, creating an American culture. I think that's a really important thing that I think is missing.
Carolyn, you had your hand up, but go ahead.
Just one thought on diversity, and I read the paper. We have a person running for Congress down in South Jersey who I guess his campaign slogan is "Diversity is crap."
I've got him coming in for an interview tomorrow. So.
This is symbolic of what's happening.
His name is Seth Grossman,
and we have to oppose someone like that. I'm sorry.
That's quite all right. Did you want to speak up?
When we were talking about education before, I just wanted to chime in for a second to say, children will listen. And they'll listen to everything. It's a Sondheim lyric from Into the Woods, and it matters. Children will listen. And so they're coming to school hearing what their parents are saying and hearing what is being said other places. And I am excited for what we do in New Jersey. We don't have ethics anymore, that's correct, but the governor has priorities, the commissioner has priorities, and we are working on instituting things like social justice and self-regulation strategies for kids to deal with some of the anger and the frustration that they bring to school from a number of different places. We start as early as pre-K. I've got a 5-year-old great nephew who sits at the ocean and does a tree pose in yoga when he needs to self-regulate. So some of that, whatever it is that kids are experiencing, we're starting to chip away at. We're working really hard at that kind of stuff, bringing in the right folks. We have an Amistad Commission, we have a Holocaust Commission where that curricula is required in high schools. So I'm not here as a cheerleader, but I do want to say that I think in terms of where we are in education, we're progressive. We recognize it. We have, harassment, intimidation, and bullying stats that wouldn't surprise you, 20% of them are racial and ethnic. But they're kids. So some of them are about having, big nose and frizzy hair. But, the things that we can identify, we try to tap into.
Ray wants in. Go ahead.
I have a question for everyone. Is there hope in the next for the next generation in terms of what we're talking about? Do we believe and expect that the younger folks will be more civil to each other and be more accepting and be more respectful?
I would say yes, if we do our job. And that is, and I was going to ask Carolyn a question actually, because I spoke to one of your colleagues at the New Jersey Department of Education on Valentine's Day actually last year, with the entire school system, students, staff, administrators, board members, the superintendent, everyone stood there on that day and they took this pledge and they made it a part of their anti-bullying program. So my question to the department was, would it be possible for us to work with all of the school systems in the state and say, take this simple idea and embed it in the anti-bullying program so that periodically people are reminded. And the reason, frankly, the value of this kind of a simple pledge is that even though we may feel offended when somebody says something hateful, but we don't have the courage to stand up and speak. We believe that once people have taken this, internalized this pledge, that people are more encouraged. I have been told by 2 priests who have been working with me in the Interfaith Coalition, who said they had to invoke the pledge, in one case with a colleague, and the other case with a family member. So my question is, we need to find a way to have our young people think about this right from the beginning in the elementary schools. And I would love for the department, and I'll be happy to work with anyone, to figure out how we can make this a part of their anti-bullying programs.
Excellent.
And I just think I want to add a little bit back to the original question.
Use your mic.
About the original question about why the senators haven't signed off on it. So we have 40 senators, and the majority of our legislature, or at least many of them, are attorneys, and we have a few attorneys in here, and I think there's a different viewpoint that we're not looking at here. If you look at the pledge, it's asking somebody to take an affirmative stance. I'm looking at it from a legal perspective, an affirmative stance towards speaking up and saying something. But we are a nation of laws, and the ultimate document that drives this country is the Constitution. And some of if I had to take an educated guess, I think a lot of the politicians have concerns that this might be something that infringes upon somebody else's right to free speech. Because if they're talking about hateful comments without any rhetoric, any type of, inciting a riot or anything like that, they might say, hey, look, they have a First Amendment right to feel how they feel as long as they're not inciting action. The second thing I want to say is that we had mentioned from Colleen mentioned, and Dr. Chaudhry mentioned the Southern Poverty Law Center. Well, it's such an interesting dynamic in the state because we're the most densely populated state in the country. Governor Murphy himself has said that we are the most diverse state in the country. I personally feel that way. But yet, if you look at the Southern Poverty Law Center statistics, we are probably, as of right now, number 5 in the number of hate groups. Okay? So if we're a nation of laws and our political leaders represent our demographics, that really tells you something about why people might not be willing to take this pledge.
Well,
I'm
if I could
going,
just-
if I may, I'm going to disagree with you. I think you're giving my colleagues too much credit. It was a while ago, Michael, I believe that, that there was a poll question asked about without identifying it as the Bill of Rights. And do you support these positions? And like a majority of Americans, or a good percentage, said, no, this is some kind of a communist document or something. So I think you're giving our senators too much credit. I think they were concerned more about that this was a political statement. I didn't see any, and it did occur when there were when there was violence by the Muslim fringe groups. I think they thought that they were taking a political stand by standing up for civil and standing up against hate. That's what
and if I
believe.
may, I would just like to make one point about Hassan's comment about free speech. Everyone has a right to free speech. This pledge does not say that you stop them from saying it. It just simply says, you, as an individual, don't stay silent. You also have the right to exercise your free speech. And that says,
Ali,
civilly, do it in a civil manner, do it in a polite manner, and perhaps asking people, have you thought about, you know, the people that you're talking about? Have you ever met a Muslim? Have you ever been inside a mosque? Would you like to meet someone? I can arrange a visit for you to meet with groups that perhaps you don't understand enough of. Some positive steps to be taken.
Yes, Reverend.
Yes. It's kind of hard for me to speak because I had a stroke, but I want to say this.
You sound
First
fine.
of all, we're people of faith that comes together, and regardless of whatever you call it, whether it's God or not, love is a motivating thing. If the love is not there, then all of the talk that we're doing will mean nothing. And so it has to start with me. It has to start with me. I had a professor once, and they talked us about force field analysis, where, you know, don't be staying, you know, what can we do to solve the problem rather than to identify or saying the problem over and over again. And so what I'd like to just propose to, you know, the way that that I handled it is that I believe God, I love for myself, and then my love for my fellow person. And until we raise that, can begin to assimilate that in our psyche, then, you know, all that we're doing will be
Love is the answer.
yeah, everybody, you know.
All you need is love, said the Beatles.
Yeah, okay. I can't say what you know, that's enough.
Okay. Nobody has pointed to one thing that occurred to me in preparing my thoughts for tonight, and that is the rise of the internet. Pat held the phone up and alluded to it, but to what extent is the internet allowing or encouraging hate speech? Yeah, Colleen?
I mean, there's no question about it. You know, you talked about the 24-hour news cycle and the right and the left, but the, you know, you can see violence online. But the other thing that you can see and that you can get online, or there are just dozens and dozens of forums. There's chat rooms. There are internet sites. You've got the fringe media people who are just stoking this. You've got you know, you had the incident in Canada, right, where the guy who I think took the truck and was mowing down people on the sidewalk, women. He was a member, or he was a participant in one of these groups. Whatever your thought is now, if you're a neo-Nazi, if you're just white supremacist, if you feel you know, women don't like you for whatever reason, you can find a site out there. You can find a place to talk about this and find people who will support you. And it's just kind of those communities then grow and grow and grow. I think it's a big difference from decades ago, where people had maybe had these thoughts, as we've talked about, but they couldn't meet other people who felt the same way.
What I'm often struck by is I read some of the comments in the political blogs that I read, or political websites that I read, like Colleen's, and you just get down to comment number 5, 6, 7, or 8, and the hate starts flying around, and it's all anonymous, which makes it easier to express those kinds of thoughts.
Question. I am what is called a lapsed Catholic. I rarely go to church, but I did go recently. And I was talking to the pastor and telling him how Pope Francis may bring me back to the church. And the pastor thought for a second. He said, he may bring me back too. I say that as a prelude to, I would like to see, Reverend, more of the faith-based community, more of the institutional religions talk about the concept of the pledge at their religious services. I don't know how we can spread that word, but I think that would have a powerful influence, as you talked about, inculcating love of our fellow human beings into each and every one of us.
Yes, Abraham.
Yes, one and the same.
Right.
If you could just bear with me for one moment, I think one of the things we didn't talk about is the Russian influence too. I've asked a lot of Muslims, do you know the Russians have forced you to hate Americans? And the answer overwhelmingly is no, I have nothing to do with Russians, to the point of internet and Facebook. But we know now for a fact, for example, in Dallas, Texas, there was a mosque library being opened. And there was Russian influence, and they sent out and set up a website for white nationalists and said, you have to oppose these Muslims. You cannot, and they stoked that. Then they went over to the Muslim side on another Facebook page and called out all the Muslims and said there's going to be a white nationalist and you have to oppose them. So as we're kind of fighting internally, I hope that people don't turn a blind eye to what's going on in the whole world, because that is very real. And when I show Muslims actually that's what actually happened in Dallas, they are dumbfounded. They don't know how to even respond to that. And the threat becomes even graver and even bigger, more four-dimensional. So, I just pray that we can all come together as a nation much quicker because the world is watching us, and we know where our president is and what he's been saying.
Let me put a thought on the table, on this big round table. Big, expensive round table, right. People have been suspicious of the other since people came into existence. Tribalism has thrived throughout most of history, and things are actually better today in this regard than ever. What do you all make of that thought? Nobody's buying it?
What comes to my mind is that no child is born with hate in their hearts. Somehow, that changes. And I don't know what to do about it, but it's an observation. No child has hate. They have to learn it.
That's true.
But Michael, I would say that, yes, I would agree that things are better in that regard, except that when the environment that we are now in is influenced by leaders of the country, and the permission, people assume they now have permission to express hate that they didn't feel they needed to. That is the challenge that we will have. So I think yes, we have all the means and the social media and the internet make it much easier for people to express their ideas anonymously. And the question now is, what can we do by way of educating right from the start in schools and in colleges. And if I may just take 30 seconds to mention that in addition to the Franklin school system, the freeholder board of Union County has taken the pledge forward as one of the regular meetings. I have had every attorney general, and the next attorney general is about to take it. We are supposed to meet soon. Has taken it. We've approached every leader that we can hold of. So I think, and I've spoken at many churches and synagogues where the pledge has become the part of the sermon as a focus of that. And my thought is that if we could really make a difference in each of our congregations, people that we touch, and ask them to consider making this a part of a commitment within the congregation, I believe we can make a contribution towards making it better.
How about that? Do you think the recitation of this pledge by more and more people would help?
I personally think it will help, but it has to go hand in hand with education, implementation. I can't say enforced respect, but teaching of respect, teaching of love. Maybe we ought to bring back a few flowers from the hippie generation when I grew up. But I'm sort of encouraged by what I see among young people and their idealism, and maybe if there's a silver lining for this day and age that we live in, is that a lot of young people are sort of listening and saying, well, things are wrong, and I can stand up and I can speak and I can get together with my friends and my colleagues and make a statement and use the media, use the internet. Certainly, my kids know more about the internet than I do, and certainly they see 3 or 4-year-olds and they've got their iPhones already and they've got their iPads and they're working on it, and so the communication is there. I'm just hoping that what we see from a good portion of our youth just spills over, and there's hope for the future. I'm optimistic, but only optimistic if we all try and work, and despite all the challenges, and the challenges are totally immense, and it's almost, I can't say it's impossible, but sometimes the impossible is possible if we all work together.
Well, one of the things, if I could mention, is that institutions can really make a big difference. The Jewish Federation in the heart of New Jersey actually held a whole event at Rutgers University where the pledge was the main focus, and everyone stood and took the pledge. And they actually had little plaques. They're saying, I took the pledge. They have now instituted a program where they're reaching out to every congregation and asking their board, their congregation, to adopt the pledge. So we think we need to engage with organizations that have influence and hopefully spread the word that way organically.
All right. I want to ask the gentleman from the Attorney General's office a question. I read a crime story within the past week. I think it was in the Monmouth County Shore area. Some young guy beat up an older guy. The guy who did the beating was white. The victim was African American. And he is facing 30 years in prison for a vicious beating with a bias crime thrown into the charges against him. And if I read it correctly, he would be facing 10 or 15 years for the beating, but the bias crime adds another 15 or 20 years to the sentence. Is that appropriate?
Well, Michael, I'm probably not going to comment. I believe it is a pending. And first of all, I think that's from the prosecutor's office is handling that. Yeah, it's about the county prosecutor's office is handling that. It's pending. I certainly wouldn't be in a position at all to comment on the pending case.
Well, I want to answer that in this way. We cannot expect that law enforcement is going to be the solution to this problem. We have to reach out to the hearts and souls of our colleagues, our neighbors, our friends, our family. The deterrence in terms of the maybe the actual physical act will be helpful, but in terms of changing people's attitudes towards each other and the hate that drives the crime can most be reduced, by what we're talking about and spreading the word about acceptance of everyone.
When you started your political career, we probably didn't even have hate crime laws. They're a thing of the more recent past, right?
No, we did not. And
so that represents progress.
It certainly does. But we can't look at criminal laws to solve society's attitudes towards folks who don't look like us, who don't speak our language as the first language.
And we should turn to the churches and the mosque and the synagogue and the schools rather than to law enforcement.
Well, I think that the most
I wouldn't
effective
leave them out.
means,
I would have
right?
to include
I think what I'm saying is and by the way, the Attorney General's office and the prosecutors under Governor Christie and under Governor Murphy have done a yeoman's job in reaching out into the community. So they're a vital element. We're all in this together, but we can't expect that laws and law enforcement is going to solve the problem that we saw on that screen earlier.
I think Linda said you can't legislate attitude.
Correct.
And Michael, as a former assistant prosecutor in the South, in southern counties, my office currently is in Monmouth County. I'm actually not familiar with this case, but what I could tell you, I know the AG's office can't comment, is that number one, if the individual was charged with, let's say, for example, an aggravated assault against the African-American victim, that's ordinarily a second-degree crime, and the way our legislature has set up the punishment is 5 to 10 years. But if there is a hate crime involved, an enhancement raises the gradation to a first degree. So if it's an aggravated assault with a hate crime component, it changes the ordinary sentencing range from 10 to 20 years from when before it was 5 to 10. Also, in a case like this, it would be subject to, as Senator Lesniak would know, the No Early Release Act. So to answer your question, is this heavy amount of prison time actually going to make a dent? I would say yes, and part of it ties into the media, because I could tell you for a decade long of doing it on the government side, proving a hate crime case is extremely difficult, even though the prosecutor's offices and the Attorney General's office, they do have their hate crimes unit and bias crimes unit. In my experience, it was very difficult to get these type of charges to stick, okay, because you're really, depending on where your demographic is, if you're taking it to a jury trial, you're really rolling the dice on people's opinions about other people when it comes to gender, when it comes to religion, when it comes to race. So that's where it gets a little bit funny, for lack of a better word. So when there is a conviction that actually comes through for hate crimes, and the media does play it, and it does get, not sensationalized, but it gets its proper prevalence throughout the community, it does make a dent, because they're so far and few in between. They might get charged like that, but ultimately they might not get pled to that.
And a hate crime is hard to prove.
Absolutely. In New Jersey, yeah, absolutely. So you could start off with you could charge anything you want. What the ultimate plea of guilt or guilt after a finding of a jury's verdict or in a bench trial with a judge, those are three separate things. So when you do actually have a hate crime conviction at the state court level, it is going to make a dent. And when people hear the sentences that accompany it, I think it is going to make people think twice about culling their rhetoric and culling their actions.
I'm going to have a slightly different view. Because in America, we have 5% of the world's population, but we have 25% of the world's prison population. And we have much higher crime than rates than other countries which do not have as significant a prison population. So I do not believe, while I have supported the upgrading of hate crimes, I think it's appropriate. I do not believe that we can look to that as the solution of what we're talking about in terms of us getting along together as human beings.
Abraham.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to what Linda said, and I couldn't agree more. And you asked the good senator about a question. Back in your day, was there hate crimes? I think society has passed our laws by, and we see it very disproportionately in the African American community, and now in the Hispanic community. Along with your 25%, the highest majority are African American and Hispanics. We do need reform in our law and our justice system. The laws are just antiquated to where the society is today. And I think that plays in a large part to some of these hate crimes that come up as well. I feel like sometimes we're putting just Band-Aids and we're throwing it out there just to be reactive rather than proactive. So I think we have to revisit those laws.
Jessica.
I think it's valuable to look at the unfortunately small percentage of hate crimes that are successfully prosecuted, but if we're talking about disparity in the prison population, I think it's also important to examine the overwhelming percentage of people of color who are sentenced to much longer terms than their white counterparts for the same or for lesser crimes. And it's like what you're saying about society passing where our laws are. You know, we're seeing it right now with all of these stories about white people calling 911 on black people doing everyday things. And it's at the point where I feel like to be an African American in this country is to be afraid to do what you do throughout your day because somebody could take something completely innocent the wrong way, and that's on you somehow.
Anybody else?
No.
Yeah.
Michael.
May I?
Go ahead.
Over here.
Go ahead.
May I?
Sorry. Oh, sorry.
May I?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
please. I didn't see it.
I'm listening to, everything, and these are great points, but they're still missing one important factor.
What is that?
Okay.
And remind me of your name.
Lionel Slade.
Lionel?
American Muslim Foundation.
What foundation?
American Muslim Foundation.
Okay.
One of the things that I'm not hearing anything about employment or lack thereof.
Employment?
Yeah.
The job.
Or the lack thereof, because you can tie all of the criminal, the hate, and everything else to lack of employment. If you go through and look at all of the statistics and everything else, if you actually looked a little bit deeper, you would find that the majority of these occurrences are occurring in areas.
We wouldn't have bigotry if everyone had a job?
No, we would have bigotry, but it wouldn't be pervasive.
What do you all think of that?
Yeah, I disagree.
Oh, you disagree? Okay.
I do. I do. You see those fellas who were on that video? Oh, yeah. I'll guarantee every single one of them had a job.
Yeah, but
they
don't represent. They do not represent the prison population. These are not people that are in prison. You
know what? I think I misunderstood.
Yeah, you misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm talking about they were talking about, all of the hate crimes that are going on and everything else. You will find out that the majority of these hate crimes that are going on in the urban centers and in the cities, okay, are what populates the prisons.
Let me just add to my perspective on that is, and I don't disagree with you, but I think that is set up. The hate sets it up.
Of course it does.
And what we have, and this may sound corny, Michael, but we do have to combat hate with love, and that's what Dr. Chaudhry is trying to do. And the more that we can inculcate this in society in every single opportunity, that's our responsibility.
There's a gentleman in the back who wanted to make a point.
Hi, I'm Josh. I just wanted to go on with the jobs. As probably the only one here that's in manufacturing and middle management, I can tell you that everyone is scared that manufacturing is leaving, especially in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
I come from the Midwest, where it's even less there.
Exactly.
There's just no jobs. So if you don't go to college and get a degree like everyone in here,
There it is.
Do you think that the pressure of that adds to hatred of the other?
Mm-hmm.
I do.
Yes.
I think that there's so
Directly
many
related.
good metal jobs that everyone's fighting for. And if you don't get that job and someone else does, you're going to feel outside, especially if they're of a different race or different sex or different religion.
I want to add something to that as well. There's a French saying that il n'y a pas de sot métier. There's no such thing as a bad job.
Thank you.
But that's only accurate if that bad job comes with a livable wage
Yeah, exactly.
and health benefits and a pension. So those Wendy's jobs,
Yeah.
those folks working in those Wendy's jobs deserve a living wage. They
agree.
deserve health care. And I don't see it as much as an employment issue
Right.
as a inequality issue.
Inequality.
That folks are seeing this disparity. I mean, what do we have? I don't know what the percentage is, but it's amazing. Like 10% of the people in America have 80% of the wealth. I mean, it's huge. Michael, it's huge. It's worse than that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's part of the something that we have to talk about and address as well.
I see another hand in the back here. Go ahead, stand up, please.
Hi, my name's Gloria Brown from Elizabeth. What I think is we can talk briefly about ethics, and I'd like to introduce you to I'd like to introduce you to one of my favorite mentors was Dr. Jerome DeCoste, blessed memory, who was the most ethical person I ever met. And when I asked him if he, in his teaching in medical college, taught ethics to the physicians, he says, you can't teach ethics from a book, you lead by example. What I think we are missing in the living wage and in government and politics are the examples of ethical people, and it needs to start from the top.
I know who you're talking about.
Was that subtle? Not very.
Can I make one more point before you?
Yes.
Just one more observation on my part. I'm born and raised in Newark, New Jersey, a lifelong Newarker. Okay, when I was in school, in elementary school, they taught civics. Okay, today I've been a tutor, and one of the things I noticed is that there's no civics. Period.
They don't teach civics, but they teach what instead? Social studies. You told us what is being taught.
Yes, civics was not what we were
no,
talking
but
about.
it was like conflict resolution or
yes.
self-regulation.
It's social and emotional wellness. That's
the reason why I key on the civics is because one of the other things, if you want the young people to be engaged in politics and everything else into their community, one of the things they need to know is how their community functions. If they've got a problem.
Is it true that civics isn't taught anymore?
I don't think civics has been taught in 50 years.
For many years. I know for a fact because I worked for the Newark Board of Education, and it wasn't part of the curriculum.
I'm born and raised in Newark and also educated in the public school system. I've been out of school for a very long time, and I was not educated in civics.
Okay.
Well, I happen to be a lot older, and I did have a civics course.
Okay.
And I must add, I had civics also in Elizabeth High School.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica and Rahat.
Yeah, we had an optional 6 months of ethics, I think my junior or senior year.
Did you opt in or
yes,
out?
Yes, and it was really good, but it wasn't nearly enough. But on the issue of employment, I think it also relates directly to systemic poverty. And if you're in a community where these are the jobs you have, they don't pay a livable wage, it means if you're in a single family home, or even if you have both parents, now they're working 2 jobs. That means that you don't have that community aspect. You don't have people who are leading by example. Exactly. And if you're in these poorer communities, you don't have arts programs, you don't have after-school programs, you don't have things that are making you more well-rounded.
Oh, may I? Okay.
Yes.
One other thing. When I was in school, yes. When I was in school, from let's say the 6th grade through high school, the schools were open till 9 o'clock. The recreation centers were available to those who wanted to be. So I didn't have to be out on the street or doing other things. I had places to go. I'm a lifelong member of the Boys Club. I was a Boy Scout.
Yeah.
Okay? And these things are no longer available to the public schools.
Why not? Money?
It wasn't money at first. They just simply cut out a lot of things because of the core curriculum changes.
We are getting a little far afield, but we did have, after the Bell programs that were, the funding was cut off by the state of New Jersey. The most dangerous time in a child's life for that child and for that child potentially getting involved in crime is from school, between getting out of school and when their parents come home. So the after the Bell programs was an important part. I think we are getting a little bit off.
Okay, we're going to get back on. Rahat wanted.
So I'll try to bring it back. And although this is a very good discussion, wanted to go back to I think a few comments ago about leadership, and I think, at least I'll speak for our office, that I think we have an Attorney General who takes that very seriously, right? As to bias crimes is a top priority of our office. Our office and and our county prosecutors, they will bring to justice perpetrators who are committing these types of acts. It is a top priority for our office. We have a hotline for those who have information that information regarding a bias incident or a bias crime. You have a hotline. You can report that. Folks don't need to have to determine whether or not the incident rises to a crime or not. We still want to know. We still need to know. We have a $25,000 reward for any information that leads to the conviction of a bias crime. Again, I mean, I think the Attorney General has said this many times in public. We wish these things were not necessary, but we live in a time where, unfortunately, they are. And at least from our perspective, we will continue to stand for the other. That is what we do as our job, and that's just one of the many ways that we're doing it.
We're winding down to our last half hour here. We need solutions. We need suggestions. We need more ideas, more encouragement. What can you offer?
Let's see.
1, 2, 3. Go ahead.
Okay. So this is not an easy solution, but it is a solution. It goes back to education. There's a group right now that is suing the state of New Jersey over school segregation. We are the most diverse state in the nation. We're also, if not we're maybe the second most segregated. And there's a whole history that I won't go into about that I just learned from reading a book and about how institutional that was. The problem with school segregation primarily is that you go to your local public school, and in New Jersey, our towns are all segregated. So the point of this lawsuit is to try to get the state to recognize this and do something to integrate. Obviously, that's a huge issue, but what former Justice of the Supreme Court Gary Stein said in discussing this suit is they had gone up to Connecticut where there is some forced, there was a segregation suit and there was some forced desegregation. And he went to some of the schools that were models. These were magnet schools that were created, and so you had inner cities and the outer ring suburbs, and there was it was more of something that people agreed to do. And he said that sitting in the elementary classes and seeing kids of all races and colors, African American, white, Hispanic, together, just playing, just laughing with one another. That's really where it starts, because they never get to grow up learning that this person is different. This person is I don't like the color of their skin, or I don't like their religion. This is where the love starts. This is where everybody gets together. So, it's definitely not an easy thing to do, but I think in the state of New Jersey in particular, where we have so much segregation, that, there's got to be a way to bring people together. I'm in a district that's predominantly white, and both my sons went through a program in high school where you had to create projects with people who were not like you, and the way that they determined that was just, you know, who's a type A, who's a type B, this kind of thing, and to try to get people to work together, as you said, right? You try to get people who are different to get together. Well, that was all fine and good, but everyone was white, so they did not have that, you know, they did not have any chance to work with people of other races or colors.
All right, Pat?
I just think we need more forums like this, more think tanks. It needs to be aired. It needs to, you know, it needs to be in the media so people say, hey, maybe, you know, this hate thing is not, you know, taking over America. You know, people need to get together more. We need to stop having labels saying I'm Jewish, I'm black, I'm this, I'm that. No, we're all people, we all heart. You know, it's about love. Love is something that it doesn't have, you can't contain it. So if you want to think about who we are love agents. You know, we are love agents, and then you shouldn't be so concerned about me being an African American, or if I came from here, if I came from Haiti, or all that. No, we're just people. We're people, and we all. How do you respect one another when you're putting labels on each other? You know, that's one thing I teach my sons. You know, never put a label on a person. Let their character speak for them, not the color of their skin, not the how they talk, you know, not if they have a strong accent. Don't do that. I tell them, always think about what the person presents to you as a person, as a character. So we got to begin to really, you know, elevate our minds. We're elevating everything else. We're elevating technology, we're elevating buildings, we're elevating ourselves here, there, everywhere. But we're not elevating our minds to say we are all human beings. It's one race. It's called the human race. It's not African Americans. Stop checking the boxes. Does it really matter if I'm African American or if I'm a female, if I'm going for a job? What should matter? My educational background, if I'm responsible, if I'm reliable, if I can do the job. My race, my color, my gender has nothing to do with it. So we, as a society, got to move forward with society.
It's interesting, what you're expressing is what the politician running for Congress, who Ray referred to an hour ago, as an example of what we don't want. He too says, the guy who says diversity is crap, he too says we should stop checking boxes on everybody.
No, Ms. Aaron, don't get me wrong. Diversity is not, diversity of mind, thought, spirit, diversity and character, all those things make the world go round. Don't get me, don't take me to that far left, okay, please.
I just was struck by the irony of the language.
Okay, no, but no, seriously, I love diversity, but also on the same token, we're so stagnated and so like, you know, it matters. You know, we need 3 African Americans here, we need 2 Latinos here, or what about, you know, sometimes it gets too far. We take it too far, so we have to have a balance.
I think you make a lot of sense.
There has to be a balance.
I wasn't contradicting you.
Thank you.
Yes, Eslan.
I think that one of the things is that people feel a certain level of comfort. I agree, we're all humans, you know, we're all Americans, but I think just subconsciously we all have our little bit of favoritism and little bit of biases. I think all of us, whether it relates to human nature or likes and dislikes that have nothing to do with humans, preferences in clothing, whatever it may be. I think, by way of example, when we're looking at positions of authority and leadership, like our politicians, the police, prosecutors, so on and so forth, I think in a state like New Jersey, which is so diverse, I think there has to be people in that power that are reflective of the demographics they're in. So just to take an example, we're slightly north of Middlesex County, Edison Township, which I believe probably has the highest Asian, if not the highest South Asian population in the entire country, okay? If you look at other pockets of our state, Essex County, for example, that has a high African American population, they have a lot of politicians, law enforcement that reflect that demographic. If you go down to where I live in Ocean County, which has a high Italian or Irish American population, their political leaders, their law enforcement reflect that. But then when you go into Middlesex County, or even Lakewood, for example, I live on the border of Toms River and Lakewood with a huge Hasidic population, you know, they have reflective members in boards of education, the local council, so on and so forth. But you look at Middlesex County, you have Edison Township, which is probably one of the most diverse places and most populated townships in the whole state. But Edison Township has all these lawsuits of allegations of racism and wrongful conduct towards minority groups, which just blows my mind. I can't understand that. You don't have a single politician at the assembly or state senate level that reflects an Indian, Pakistani, or Bangladeshi, which just bewilders me. You have, there's never been a...
You used to have Upendra Chivakula.
What, was he in Middlesex or was he in Somerset? Somerset.
So what's your, so we're trying to
Right.
find out
So
solutions.
the solution I would say is that ultimately there needs to be some discussion that helps foster and motivate people in those demographics that look like them. So a chief of police who's in Edison Township maybe should be a little bit reflective of the people he's governing there. A county prosecutor should be reflective of the person he's governing over there. It works in all different pockets of the state. I mean, clearly I gave 3-4 factual examples, but in that locale, for example, maybe South Asians are a little bit behind, but I mean, my personal bias, I think it's a group that's slowly starting to get involved, is highly educated, respects the law here, loves the country, and I think that to foster this relationship, we got to bring them to the table, and we got to get people to match that demographic.
So basically what you're talking about is that the political power structure does not recognize that. Is that what you're saying?
In part, correct.
Jake?
Yeah, this may not be a popular one, and certainly I don't want to bring back the draft. But just
probably one of the last people drafted.
No matter what you think of the Army in Israel, the Israeli Defense Force, it is by far the most diverse group. Certainly Israel is a melting pot, and when you get into the Army, you're basically a soldier, whether you're a woman or you're a man. But I found that during that, whether training and working together and being a single force to defend the country, whatever it is that motivates them, brings them together, when they come out, they're more respectful of each other. And I think that's been a positive element. So bringing it here, I think one of the solutions might be, and I don't know whether it's education or whether it's the legislature and finding money, is build programs that'll bring people together, young people together from throughout the state to work on useful projects. I mean, the Peace Corps is great, but why not have sort of a local internal Peace Corps where kid was part of their schooling or part of the curriculum or part of, they're sort of mandated to spend the summer working on some sort of a major project that'll benefit the state and get to know each other. So it'll be people not only from the districts that are all white, but it'll be, from different districts. And well, in any case, I just think it's a great way of getting young people to work together, understand each other, and learn from each other. And you don't walk into a room as my wife did when she went to college for the first time, and her roommate thought the Jews had horns. Well, certainly they don't, but in any case, I think it would be a great opportunity to build relationships and build a better community for New Jersey and for the country if they can duplicate it at some point.
John?
I live in one of the, probably the most diverse school system in the entire state of New Jersey. 60% of our, 2/3 of our student body is of a different minority group. 66 languages are spoken at home.
You used to live in Clifton.
I still do, yes. Okay. And the most important thing that I've learned from the diversity of my city is that you're still striving for excellence, and the children are looking to become part of this American dream. They're all They all work very, very hard. We had a program once at our Board of Education meeting whereby you know, students who had been less than 3 years in our country and, you know, were part of our ESL program got up and made speeches. And let me tell you, they gave better speeches than most people who were born here. They spoke English very well, could really express themselves. So I think, you know, I think shedding some light on people who are successful at bringing diversity together. You know, we have an Orthodox community on one end of town, we have the Palestinians on the other end of town, and, you know, it all works. And there's such a diversity within it, you know, South Asian and whatever. And the point that I want to make about the school system is 7 students of the top 10 were all accepted at Ivy League universities. And they weren't wealthy kids, they weren't, you know, some were born here, some were not. It's just amazing. So it can be done. And I think shedding light on some of those things is really important.
Michael, let me what you just said struck me in this way. And let me call into question something. Are we making more of this hate issue than it really is? No. It exists and it's real.
Yeah.
It exists and it's real, and we have to find some solutions, and that's what we're here for.
We are. Reverend?
I work for the Union County Interfaith Coordinating Council, and it's a very exciting to be a part of that. And what we do is that we bring all of the faiths together. We had one in April where you know your neighbor, and we had people from every level of life, and it was amazing that when we learned for the other people, and so that's one of the things that I would encourage, that is to get together with people from various cultures and religions, and allow them to speak truthfully about who they are and what they do.
Good, thank you. Anybody else? Jake?
Yeah, I think someone mentioned something about additional forums. I think this has been absolutely wonderful, and it's absolutely great. And as I'd like to say, it's the first conversation of many conversations I hope will continue through the next few years. But Ray, can I just suggest that maybe bring the next one down to Rowan and have a conversation down there and someplace in central New Jersey, and take it on the road? I think it'd be marvelous. You are now designated our leader to bring in the flock. Bring in the flock.
Remember that, but that's a great idea, and I'll take you up on that.
We got a few more hands. We got a woman with her hand up in the back. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Abraham.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that point and to what Brother Jake said. Years ago when I was in high school in Bridgewater, I often want to go overseas and experience 1 year of high school in Italy or somewhere and see that culture. And then recently, a few months ago, we had this terrible mass shooting in Texas where a Pakistani girl, Sabah Sheikh, 16 years old, was killed. It was the Christian family that wept more than her parents. So that made me think of, why can't we start a program here in New Jersey? I think rather than flying our kids off to Germany and Italy, get someone from Kansas to spend 6 months in Newark, and get someone from Newark to spend 6 months in Kansas. I think that is the crux of diversity. I hope we can start solving some of these knots, because believe me, a lot of Muslims didn't know that that was a Muslim girl that got shot down there, and the Christian family would speak so eloquently and beautifully. And I thought that, you know, that could be part of the solution as well.
Very good. Yes, Rod.
On the topic of, or the theme of solutions, one thing I wanted to raise, and I think it fits well with what we're doing here today. The Attorney General this year announced a community policing project, 21 county, 21st century community policing project. Mouthful, we call it 2121. The Attorney General has charged every county prosecutor in this state to hold at the very least one community meeting every quarter. Last quarter, we were talking about officer-involved shooting investigations. This quarter, county prosecutors are organizing meetings revolving around the opioid epidemic. Next quarter, we're going to be talking about immigration enforcement. And then lastly, at the end of the year, we're going to be talking about bias crimes. So I think, you know, certainly, you know, every county will be having these meetings. Come visit our website. We're going to be posting the dates and times, locations for these meetings. I think it goes well with what we're trying to accomplish here is continuing this dialogue, engaging the community more than just simply the folks that are here in this room, and trying to advance, you know, what we're trying to do here.
Very good. Anybody else? Getting time to wrap it up soon, but I see 3 hands. We'll cut it off there.
I know there was a large push for religious involvement, and I'd like to say I'm a member of Temple Emmanuel in Westfield, and our teens go every Martin Luther King's weekend down to New Orleans to do social programming, and we do a Muslim program every Saturday for the community. There are things that could be done on a small basis, and each small step adds up, but it's mostly with the teens that are receiving those efforts, and I think it's a good way to start learning, and it's a good idea to share with the other community members.
All right, what were the other 2 hands I saw? Ali was one.
I would request that each one of us here goes back as an ambassador of this message to each of our congregations, and at least get one event around this idea of talking about this pledge in your own community. And if you would like any one of us to come, there will be Senator Lesniak, myself, and anybody else would be willing to come and support that. I think if we could go beyond words, act on it, we can spread the word and get more people to sign on and do the same thing. Thank you.
All right, Linda, last word before we wrap up.
All right, how befitting.
What did you say?
Since we process information differently, because we all have different learning styles, I truly believe that our approach must be multifaceted, and that you have to reach the education community, the workplace, faith-based areas, all age groups, all people. And don't forget that there will be that pushback, those that want to hold on to that hatred. And we just have to find a way to put our finger in the dike of that fluid running hatred that exists. We can recite a pledge, but the courage is in the application of that pledge.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to wrap up, and then I'll let you have the final word. It's been an interesting conversation, very interesting. And you all managed to come up with 3 pages of solutions in my notebook. Here are the solutions to the hate speech problem. Education, voting, encourage more voting. Do it by example. Don't rely on law enforcement. Take the pledge, sign the pledge, promote the pledge. Attack segregation. Have more forums like this. Love is the answer. No labels on people. Promote the idea of one race, the human race. Make sure that law enforcement and political establishments reflect the communities they work in. promote diversity in the military, or create some kind of program of national service. Celebrate diversity. Encourage more interfaith and cross-cultural activities. Start young, teaching children about respect. Promote student exchanges within the state of New Jersey, not just from between far-flung communities. Encourage community policing in the form of meetings, regular meetings with the community. And lastly, take a multifaceted approach and do it all. So that was pretty good.
The beat, Michael. Well, okay, so let me first thank everyone for being here and participating, taking your time out, and respecting what an important issue that we're talking about here. And we're really talking about the future of America, an America that is changing, and in some respects not changing in the way that we would like it to be changed, or in the way it should be changing. So it's incumbent upon all of us to bend that moral curve of the universe that Dr. King talks about back towards justice. And we can do that, and we will do that. And I want to thank every one of you and everyone watching on Facebook for participating in tonight's event. We will be in touch. We're not going away. We're going to stick this out together. So what I would like to do to end the program, Dr. Chaudhry?
Just a reminder to, I'd just like to request that everyone please sign the...
Your mic.
Wait, Michael, Dr. Chaudhry, before we leave, that's not going to be it. We're going to go, if you would like, I know we would. Let's take the pledge again to end off the evening. Can we all stand up? And Dr. Chaudhry, can you please lead us?
Sure, yes. Thank you. Please repeat after me. While interacting with members of my own faith, or ethnic, or gender community, or with others, if I hear hateful comments from anyone about members of any other community, I pledge to stand up for the other and speak up to challenge bigotry in any form.
Thank you, everyone. Good night. Godspeed, and be well. God bless you.